Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I am the USCFootball.com publisher, Ryan Abraham, and joined alongside Chris Trevino and Shotgun Spratling. And we're going to talk all about USC football going into fall camp. Starts this coming week, which is exciting. We're going to talk about the access that we'll be able to get and the coverage we'll be able to provide during USC fall camp and during the season. Of course, Pac-12 Media Day was Friday, so we got to hear from Lincoln Riley. We got to hear from Shane Lee, the linebacker transfer from Alabama, and Caleb Williams, the quarterback transfer from Oklahoma. We also heard from George Kliavkoff and all the other coaches, a bunch of players in the Pac-12. So we'll kind of give our thoughts. Chris and I were both there in person. Shotgun was watching on the East Coast on the Pac-12 network feed, seeing what was going on there. So we'll give your thoughts on what's going on. A lot of talk about the future of the Pac-12, the future of USC, maybe a few shots taken at the Trojans and the Bruins for leaving and what it means for student athletes. A little bit of that. This is the first time we got to hear from George Kliavkoff since the news broke 1 month ago, like on the eve of his 1-year anniversary as the commissioner of the Pac-12. I read a lot of the one-on-one interviews, Dennis Dodd, John Canzada, a bunch of people that got to talk to him one-on-one. Our own Brandon Marcello from 24/7 Sports. So kind of get his, he had a general theme. So we'll kind of talk about that and get any thoughts on all that. You should be able to watch us live on all three platforms. We're on YouTube Live, we're on Facebook, and we are on Twitter Live. So appreciate all that. If you are on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, we should be able to put your comments up on the screen. So you can do that. I'll start monitoring those in a little bit, and we'll just watch it. We'll put them in a little doc, and at the end of the show, we'll try to go through all your questions, anything you wanted to know. Try to put question, because we get a lot of comments in those boxes. So if you put question, we'll be able to spot it easier and maybe pull it up and answer your question. But it's a beautiful, warm Sunday evening here in Southern California. It's Sunday night on the East Coast for Shotgun Spratling. But Shotty, how you doing out there, man?
I'm doing well, and you said that I got to watch the feeds. Let's back that up a little bit. And I tried to watch the feeds of the Pac-12 network. It was not, once again, Pac-12 network being Pac-12 network was not very well organized. They had George Kliavkoff talk, and that was live.
That's good.
And then that was repeated 3 times. And then they waited around for a little bit, and then they did some interviews with each of the sit-downs with all softball questions from the Pac-12 network, which you would expect, and you would like to see those interviews. But, just watching some of the other media days and, especially paying a little bit more attention to the Big Ten media days this year, media days, because they have 2 days, they spread it out, and they take their time, and you watch the full interview where the journalists and not just the people that are being paid by the conference are asking the questions. You get the real questions. There's questions about USC and UCLA moving conferences, and not just, hey, someone got married during the off season. What's that like? Hey, look at those socks you're wearing. That's fancy. Let's talk a little bit of football. Let's talk about some stuff that people are actually interested in instead of blah, 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 blah for, 3 or 4 minutes of a 10 or 12-minute interview and wasting a lot of time when there's so many intriguing storylines in the Pac-12 network. Now, I did find that they did have the coaches live streamed online on the Pac-12 Insider.
They did.
Which I still don't know what the hell that is. Honestly, I don't know if that's an app. I don't know if that's just an online thing. I know I watch it through online, and I've been able to watch some, baseball games during the spring and stuff, but still don't really know what the hell it is. And I get emails that tell me what's going to be on the Pac-12 Insider and stuff. It's just not really well marketed and whatnot. And you didn't get to hear from the student athletes at all. And that's one of my favorite things about Media Day, and one of the things that, that I was disappointed not to be a part of this year is not just the USC student athletes, because we do get a chance to talk to them, but hearing from guys like Chase Lucas last year and Britton Covey from Utah, just absolutely, I was astounded listening to them talk. And I was like, I love these guys now.
Yeah.
I want to talk to them after, when they play USC. I want to hear their thoughts. I want to see what quotes they're giving about USC leading up to the USC game, because I know these are very thoughtful young individuals that are, that take their time and put really thought. And I, got a chance to chat one-on-one with those guys a little bit, off camera and off the podium and stuff. And you didn't even get those podium talks. So thankfully you guys were filming both the podium and Lincoln Riley to hear the players' thoughts and get a chance to hear what Caleb Williams and Shane Lee said, because I think that was one of the things that was really missing from their coverage is, they did the sit downs with them. And again, softball questions, and you get 2 or 3 minutes from these guys versus a true 15 minutes where they're being peppered and, some real questions being asked of them, and a lot with so many new faces in the Pac-12 and so many impact new faces potentially at USC and other places, which is one of the things that was kind of disappointing about Pac-12 Media Day, watching from afar.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you say hello to Shotgun, that's what you get. So
I almost left to go to the bathroom.
Real quick, so what he was referring to, we thought they were going to broadcast what we see, the main stage at Pac-12 Media Day. They did not. I actually met a lot of nice people that work at the Pac-12. This guy started talking to me, Bob, and seeming a really nice guy, listens to the podcast of Champions and stuff. And, he works with the programming and everything. He was on set when we were watching Yogi Roth and Ashley Adamson. That's her last name, right? Yeah. Interview.
Adamson.
Yeah. You interview the player, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, and I think it was Nigel Burton interviewed Shane Lee, if I'm not mistaken. But I was sitting there talking with him while that was going on. And he said they do broadcast the whole thing live, but it's on the website, right? The network, they show those kind of 20-minute blocks. And apparently the reason was you can kind of reuse those a lot easier than you can like the live thing. So they have it's basically like for replay purposes or something. But that was sort of like the mindset of what I got to talk to about that. I'm like, why isn't this going out live? And he's like, well, it is on the website. So, but like you said, I'm not sure where that would be.
So that's interesting that's the reasoning they give, because, they did the Pac-12 Media Day is basically split up into half. And it used to be northern teams and southern teams. And, one would go before lunch, one would go after lunch. And so, if USC was the last one this time on the podium, well, they do all their other media engagement stuff for the Pac-12 network, shooting the commercial, the spots and stuff. All that stuff happens, but they don't have to arrive at 8 a.m. They arrive at lunchtime, eat lunch, and then they go do that stuff, and they cycle through each of the teams. Which is looking at the Big Ten and how they did their media day, I thought it was interesting. They would have a coach speak, and then those coaches, on the podium, then those coaches go out and I think they do some more stuff as well. But they have players then come up and speak with the network, and they have the network break down what the coaches said. So there's that reusable stuff. Whereas the Pac-12 network, they had that first group go, and then it repeated itself, and then it repeated itself again. So while their coach is talking, and there could be live content, they're playing the Utah and Colorado interviews for the third time, while USC is up on set and actually talking, and even instead of doing it live, so there were some things that I understand why they could do that and why that is repeatable, but there's just more content items out there for them that I think, and this has been a problem with the Pac-12 network throughout. And like you said, Ryan, I've talked with a lot of people that work for the Pac-12 network and for the Pac-12, and I've had great conversations with them and very nice people, but just the entity as a whole, there's just so many opportunities that they're not fully capitalizing on. And I think it's been a continual running thing where, instead of having, big name opportunities and, big market events of, top 5 baseball teams playing, instead you got a rerun from 3 weeks ago. Instead of having live content from the media day and doing some different things, potentially you're playing the same thing over for a third time. Now it's fine that you want to capture that and have it for replay, but does it need to be replayed 3 times before we hear from the second group of teams at all?
Yeah.
Like that, like you can play it the rest of the day, the next day, because you don't really necessarily have content, but why are you replaying it while there's live capture opportunities going on?
Yeah.
Those are the type of issues that I think the Pac-12 network has suffered from.
So Tony, I put a comment up from him. He said, Pac-12 website was wonderfully streaming totally free the coaches. It was the first Pac-12 thing I've ever been able to watch. So I guess it was up on the website. So that's cool.
They got it right 2 years ago. They got it right.
Chris, hello to you. Since
Look, I'm just here to look pretty. I got a haircut. I'm just here to look nice. So
you're looking sharp, dude. I like
thanks.
it.
This is a Shotgun and Ryan show. I'm just here.
I really
so I
didn't
don't
say
get
much.
fined.
I gave a little intro.
Chris, I do have to ask, how was the environment of the Pac-12 network or the Pac-12 Media Day? Because you were quick to mention there's no Wi-Fi. How is there no Wi-Fi in, Tech Capital Conference and in LA? Well, what happened here?
Look, if you were to ask me what my thoughts are on Pac-12 Media Day, I would just come back and say my most popular tweet from Friday was about how crappy the Wi-Fi was. I believe my exact words were, the Pac-12 Media Wi-Fi is officially dead, much like, never mind, this tweet probably won't even go out. And that did a lot of numbers. And it was very funny because I think Ryan had this tweet too where you could just see everyone's iPhone being used when you pulled up the Wi-Fi's to join. So it's like everyone had to hotspot their Wi-Fi. I do not have a newer Wi-Fi, so my hotspot Wi-Fi is not great. It was just marginally better than the Pac-12, but I kept trying. I kept plugging into the Pac-12 Media, and it would just go for literally 30 seconds, and then it would die.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit frustrated as someone who, working media there. I didn't do any stories there because I couldn't connect to the internet. So that was a big blow in terms of my review of Pac-12 Media Day, and it was a much smaller venue than we're used to.
Yes.
I didn't go last year. Was that the same venue?
No, it was at the W Hotel last year.
Okay, but smaller, right? This was
smaller, I think. Yeah, from what I remember.
And
yeah.
I did notice that obviously they would have, in years past, it was a much bigger room. You'd have the coach way up front, and then you would have the players on sort of opposite corners. But this year they had the players go at the same time in the same table as the coach. And since it was such a small room, you could hear the players kind of talking. Their quotes and their responses to questions were sort of cutting into the coach when he was speaking on the podium. And you could kind of you'd be listening to a coach, and then you'd hear a player say something over it, and you would just kind of get a little bit confused, getting caught up in what someone was saying across the room. And like I said, it wasn't a very big room. So I was looking more so at the issues with the day in itself. I don't want to feel like I'm just shitting on the Pac-12 organizers or whatever, but the rows could not have been smaller, could not have been more squished together. I got bumped several times.
It was definitely tight. It was tight in there. And to be fair, all the national reporters, when we were saying the Wi-Fi sucked, they were like, SEC Media Day Wi-Fi sucked, Big Ten Media Day Wi-Fi sucked. So even the rich conferences, their Wi-Fi sucks. So I don't know. It's 2022. We still can't get the Wi-Fi right.
Everyone's Wi-Fi sucked.
It was very tight in there. And I didn't, when I left my seat to go do something else, I didn't want to go back. And there was
That's why you have to sit at the end.
Yeah, we didn't sit at the end. We sat in the middle. But I was trying to get a better spot if I wanted to shoot, but we didn't end up shooting because we were close. So, yeah, it was weird. And if you want to look at what George Kliavkoff said, like I mentioned, this was the first time he got to speak. A lot of different talking points. One of the things that he said was that the Big 12 was basically launching grenades, trying to destabilize the Pac-12. He made it very clear in every interview I heard. He said, there's no big Pac-12 school that's going to go to the Big 12. It doesn't make financial sense. He kind of took some shots at the Big 12's deal. Big 12's deal doesn't come up until 2025. Pac-12's 2024. A lot of it's going to hinge on what that deal is going to be. He seemed pretty confident that the conference would be stable at 10, maybe even 11, because he made some comments that UCLA might be running into trouble to get over there. They got the Board of Regents thing coming up. He said a lot of the people around UCLA are unhappy with this decision, and some of the reporters I talked to are like, yeah, there's nothing they can force them to do, but if there's enough pressure internally where they're like, hey, you got to subsidize Cal because you're leaving and blah, 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 and they're like, all right, we'll just stay. So I don't think there's a very likely chance that happens, but there was at least some talk of that. But the 10 teams he felt was going to be pretty stable, and you have to wait for the Big Ten deal, which is probably going to be announced in the next couple of weeks. and then he's going to keep working on the Pac-12 deal. The window for they have an exclusive negotiating window that lasts 30 days that ends August 7th with ESPN and Fox. Fox isn't going to be involved because they're the Big Ten. But ESPN, there's not going to be a deal coming up in the next week. But he thinks over the next couple of months, after the Big Ten deal is announced, they'll have something there. And then at least have some numbers to dig into. They're going to be creative. They're going to have a streaming, most likely a digital element to this at some point. So he's a smart guy. I think they will come up with some kind of creative solution. But you're not going to. Basically, you have to be. You're trying to be a distant third. You're not going to get first. You're not going to get second. But if you can be a distant third and be above the ACC and the Big 12, that's more appealing, and that's going to keep at least your members here. If the Big Ten comes calling and says, "Hey, Oregon and Washington, you should come," then they're gone. Like there's nothing you can do there. So are they going to sign a grant of rights? It's definitely going to be a shorter deal this time. That Larry Scott signed a 12-year deal, which was way too long. So they're going to probably sign like 4 or 5, 6-year deals, something like that, which is better. Will it include Oregon? Will it include Washington? We'll have to wait and see. But he pretty much put any of those rumors that the Arizona schools, Colorado, Utah are leaving for the Big 12. He made it very clear that that is not the case. And every time they're being solicited by someone in the Big 12, those presidents and chancellors, ADs, forward the emails over to George Kliavkoff, and he gets to read them all. So I thought that was kind of funny. But there was no Mike Bohn there, no Martin Jarmond there, so the athletic directors at USC and UCLA. George Kliavkoff said he hasn't talked to those athletic directors at all. He talked to the two presidents, Carol Folt. I'm blanking on UCLA's president's chancellor's name. They talked. Yeah, they talked like right after this to be formally announced that, formally let them know, hey, we're leaving the conference. That's all the communication they've had. There's been future meetings for the Pac-12 where USC and UCLA were not involved, and I think we saw the same things in the Big 12 where if it's a meeting about what's going on right now, everyone can be involved. If it's a meeting about the future, the new TV deal, USC and UCLA aren't going to be involved in that. So that's sort of my little summary of like what Kliavkoff said. Anything else that I missed or stand out for either of you guys about what he said about the kind of state of the conference and USC and UCLA leaving?
Just for me, I like that he was maybe aggressive isn't the word, but he didn't. He was a little spicy. He was a little feisty up there. And I refer to him as the commish moving forward because I never know how to say his last name correctly. But the commish was a little bit of an attitude out there. There's some times he was like, I'm not going to dignify that with a question. He had some tongue-in-cheek moments, talking about the Big 12 in terms of we don't know if we're going to go shopping there yet. So, and then, he was a little bit abrasive at times when a reporter asked a question he didn't like. When the New York Times came up and they asked him about a comment he made earlier about they were going to accommodate USC and UCLA athletes throughout their final run through the conference. New York Times asked him basically, why would you do that? And he was like, because it's the right thing to do. And you could tell he was really frustrated with that line of questioning because these are teenagers. These are kids. This wasn't a decision made by them. So it's only the right thing to do to sort of be cordial to these young men and women in this conference. And that was obviously the classy high road to take for the commissioner. And listening to him, I just felt like I think he's the right commissioner, but he's just at a bad time. And I think RJ Arbedia had a column up about it, just how I think, the commission could be a really good commissioner. It just happened to be placed in the situation that it was a very, very hard situation to win. And, he's doing his best given the hand he's been dealt. The hand got a lot worse, but he's at least, it seems like he's trying. So that was kind of my takeaways from the commission's opening remarks.
Yeah.
A little spicy there.
Like David Carr could have been a great quarterback, but he was picked by the Texans, right? And they just stunk. And, who knows? In another life, he could have
took 900 sacks.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Chris. Like you look at him and you root for George Kliavkoff, especially with what the Pac-12 has been through the decade before, and you feel bad for him. Like Chris said, the cards he's been dealt because he's got a 2, a 7, a jack, nothing suited, and like, what are you going to do with his hand here? And there's just no good cards in there right now. He's trying to, pick a couple more, and he's just not getting what he needs there. And his best cards are shipping their way to the Big Ten right now. So you do feel bad for him in that regard. But you look at it, you go, man, if this guy would have been given the reins when Larry Scott was given the reins, where would this conference be at right now?
Exactly.
How different would it be? And you think, would the Pac-12 be one of the top 2 conferences, if not, if it wasn't top 3 conferences? Because maybe Kliavkoff, but if the same situation was on the table with Oklahoma and Texas potentially coming to to the Pac-12, I think he gets that deal done. Larry Scott wasn't able to get it done. I think he has the foresight to find a way to get that done. And then what happens? How different is it the last decade? If those 2 teams, and I think there were a couple more that were going to come with them, Oklahoma State, and I don't remember who the fourth one was going to be, that joined the Pac-12 and became the Pac-16. How different does it look then? What does SEC start picking up the pieces from there? How quickly does the realignments happen? But it would have been completely, vastly different. And I think he's a guy that would have got that done, whereas Larry Scott, just didn't have the foresight and didn't have the care. And Kliavkoff has gone around and done the tour of the campuses, has gotten the feedback. He's done all the things that you would want a leader to do. And unfortunately, just things that are out of his hands, have not been able to, to help him out. So I feel bad for him in this situation. And he's a guy that, you want to follow and say, wherever he goes next, if the Pac-12 ends up folding or whatever, you think that company or that situation is going to improve with him at the helm because of what he showed so far with the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Shotgun, what would have a Larry Scott opening remarks sounded like on Friday?
There would have been a lot of discussion about, the water polo wins that the conference has had, and that the track and field is really improving in the conference, and the UCLA made it to the softball, to the College World Series for softball. It would have been bad. It would have probably taken him. It would have taken at least to the question and answer phase before USC and UCLA were even mentioned, or anything was mentioned about the fact that, hey, we got to do something about this going forward. Larry Scott just lived in his own bubble, and that included every other sport except for football when he was supposed to be talking about football, unfortunately. So, that's what I would have expected from Larry Scott. And then the Q&A phase would have just been hilarious because there would have been no answers at all. There would have been no spice. He was just kind of talked around things and not giving an answer. He was one of those type of responders to difficult questions. So, I didn't think Larry Scott did a very good job or a good job or any job for most of the time, whereas Kliavkoff has done as best as he can with what he's been handed.
Yeah. I agree with some comments about him being, dealt a crap sandwich and all that. For real. I think he's been, done a really nice job his first year for what you could do. Could have been I'm sure he could have done some things better. There was a mistake. He said he didn't regret not adding the Big 12 teams last year when they would have had an opportunity to. At the time, though, he said it was the right decision, which I kind of agree with him. But you didn't have the foresight to say, hey, USC and UCLA could leave. You could argue that should he have been talking to USC and UCLA about a bigger slice of the pie? Was that a non-starter for the other Pac-12 members? We're just not going to know. They're talking about it now, like, hey, if UCLA came back, could they get a bigger share? George Kliavkoff talked about maybe more incentive-based. If you make a playoff or something, you get a bigger piece of that. But I don't think that would really cut it. If you're USC, UCLA, or if you're the bigger brands left like in Oregon or Washington, you're just going to want more money. Like, hey, it doesn't matter how well we perform. We want to get more money. I'm not sure the other schools are ready to do that. Maybe they are now that USC and UCLA left. You're like, well, look, do you want to lose those schools too? You got to you're going to have to pay the bigger brand. So we'll kind of see. But let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
I thought it was interesting as well, the news that came out simultaneously or right after Pac-12 Media Day, Brady McCullough's story for the LA Times, that USC, was, and Carol Folt, the president, was one of the ones that kind of put the kibosh on that opportunity to add a couple of the Big 12 schools and didn't feel like it was the right time to do that. And that makes you you immediately wonder, was USC playing the long game at that time, or was that just the decision, that was appropriate in that situation, and there wasn't this opportunity at that time yet? And that's a $1 million question, or multi-million dollar question for USC and UCLA, because the numbers that are being thrown out right now for ESPN and some of the other offers for the amount of money that would be supplied to the conference for the media deal right now, compared to what USC and UCLA are being hypothesized that they will receive, are huge disparities. So you wonder if USC and UCLA had foresight on that, or if it just kind of played out that way.
Yeah. Well, we also heard from Lincoln Riley. Let me put a picture of him up there, looking very dapper in his suit. The
suit gang.
The suit gang. Yeah, I'll put a picture up. Caleb Williams and Shane Lee. Everyone looked good in their suits. There was some little kind of newsy stuff with hearing about Max Gibbs, who's not on the roster, dealing with some kind of personal issue. Atticus Bertram's the punter from Australia, also not being on the roster. It seems like there's some optimism there that he might come around again at some point. There was some kind of injury or something. But any thoughts on that stuff or any of the newsy items, Chris, from what Lincoln Riley had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect to get anything really in depth as far as those two updates with those guys. I mean, both of them are significant losses, though. I mean, Atticus, while a true freshman, 6'3", 215 pounds, Aussie from down under, he was, projected to be USC's starting punter, or a guy who's to be the favorite to win that job out of fall camp, despite just being a true freshman. But now USC's punting situation looks a little bit wary. It was a kind of a question mark going in, but at least you had a scholarship player at that position, and now you got two walk-ons. Will Rose, who took the majority of the spring camp reps and spring game, and I know that was a talking point for fans that the punting looks a little bit shaky right now. But you did bring in Garth White. He is a 5-star JUCO prospect, 5-star in the ratings. The kicker ratings, not necessarily are the composite of 24/7 Sports rankings, but he didn't punt a lot at the JUCO level out of Ventura, just because he was behind a really good punter / kicker. But he has dual ability as a punter and kicker, and right now, I'm looking at him with the assumption that Atticus is not going to play this season, and I'm looking at him like, hey, this is his job to win. He's coming in here with some experience, with a highly regarded ranking behind him. He's a big guy, 6'4", 200 pounds. That could be your punter right there. And then obviously Max Gibbs being the sort of the bigger one, just because USC does not have adequate depth at, one, offensive line, and two, at the interior. You did bring in Cooper Lovelace, but Max Gibbs was operating as your second-team right guard for all of spring camp. Dropped 30 pounds, was down to 370. I know a lot of people were excited to see, this is what he did from winter to spring. What's he going to look like from spring through summer to fall camp? Probably another significant weight drop, hopefully maybe around 350. But now, that's a big hole in your depth. He didn't have any playing experience at offensive line. Obviously, if you remember, he played defensive line last season to help out with that those depth issues. But I was expecting him to get a lot of time as sort of a developmental player. USC puts up a bunch of points in the first half, third quarter. Get those backups in. Get those offensive linemen, like a Mason Murphy, like a Cooper Lovelace, like a Max Gibbs, like a Gino Quinones. Get those guys some reps in the fourth quarter, in the third quarter. Let them build some confidence. So if there's an injury, and Shotgun, we talk about this all the time, if there's an injury at the offensive line, which is usually you have at least one pop up, you have somebody that is getting time, getting experience, getting confidence. So Max Gibbs is a guy, a lot of potential. There's a reason why Alabama was the school that offered him, why Florida offered him, why SEC teams were looking at him. Super high potential. You could see it was coming together in the weight room. So this is a big loss for them, just in terms of, a guy who had a really high ceiling, and obviously for the depth for next season.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Shotgun, on what Riley had to say?
Now, going back and playing things through my mind, I know there was some individual talk about this type of stuff, but those type of the talk about Atticus Bertram and Max Gibbs didn't really come up in the podium discussions, which tells you how much has changed for USC just as far as this offseason. There's so many other things to talk about, but also how far away that is. There's just so much going on with the conference realignment, all this type of stuff that's not necessarily something that came up. I thought the most interesting things from the players and from Lincoln Riley responding to the allegations, to the social media rumors, to all the discussion about Jordan Addison, the Pat Narduzzi mouthing off, I guess you want to call it, just going off. He's gone off a couple times this offseason, whether it be about Jordan Addison or about his own offense coordinator from last year and throwing the ball too much. So I thought it was interesting that he answered that it was something that affected him, I guess, that he took as a slight, the way that Pat Narduzzi didn't just shrug it off. He says, I built this reputation, and for someone to come at me, absolutely, it does, does warrant, that conversation. And he said he talked with Narduzzi, and when asked what those conversations were, he said, I'm not going to talk about that necessarily. But that was the most intriguing thing for Lincoln Riley, I thought. With the players, I thought the most interesting thing was the talk about culture and the talk about how that's changed. That's something we've been wondering the entire time, in something that had to change for USC, something that Dante Williams started putting in the baby steps for this group, when Clay Helton was fired, but obviously there were still big steps to take. And to hear what Caleb Williams and Shane Lee said about how this group has come together, which is a difficult thing when you bring in so many newcomers. The roster is so different from last year. As Chris tweeted out, and they released in their media guide, how many, players that were on the roster last year that are gone. 54 players that were on the roster. Now, that includes walk-ons, and the number on the roster was up over 100, but 54 players. That's more than an NFL roster is allowed to have on game day. That's crazy, the number of people that have changed there. So you bring in 20 transfers, you bring in the freshmen, and then, you're seeing the growth from guys, and there were a ton of, new guys last year. And how is that group going to meld? But it sounds like, and hey, we'll have to wait until we see them on game day for one, but a little bit in fall camp, we should get a better idea as well as how is that group going to come together? And from Caleb Williams and Shane Lee, it sounds like that group has come together much quicker than they anticipated, as guys coming from two really strong programs in Oklahoma and Alabama. And they were really surprised. And, listen to Shane Lee talk about how, hey, he's been interested in golf, and he's like, I kind of want to go. And the offensive linemen were the ones that invited him to go out. Not the other linebackers, not somebody else on defense, not some other transfer, but some of the returning offensive linemen said, hey, come out with us. You can use my clubs. We'll teach you. Don't worry. Let's go have some fun. And those type of experiences, are what builds builds the locker room culture. So it was very interesting to me. That's one of the things we've been wondering about. And because we haven't seen as much, on-field action in spring camp, we've still been wondering about, but it sounds like those things that you really need to take that next step and to play above the level of just the talent on paper, which is what USC has not done well recently. They've been talented on paper, but they played below it. And now, can you play above the talent level that you have? So then do you start, does one guy pick up from another guy and go that extra step, go that extra mile? And it sounds like those guys have been doing that in the weight room especially. Caleb Williams talked about how he's lost 6 pounds and lost 2% body fat. He's talked about the offensive linemen, how much they're bench pressing and everything else. Those were the things that stood out to me from what the players had to say.
Yeah.
I do hope Shane Lee did joke that he was terrible at golf, but I hope that he was Happy Gilmoreing it out there. like just straight wind it up, boom, send that sucker 600 yards. Another newsy thing that I wanted to just quickly touch on is that USC was projected third in the media poll behind Utah, deservingly should have been named number one. Oregon at number 2, and then USC at third, even though USC got more second place votes, 5 to the 2.
First place votes.
Excuse me. 5 first place votes to Oregon's 2 first place votes. And But the whole thing, media poll, preseason, doesn't matter. But I think USC should feel not happy, but I think that's a fair spot. Third, considering all the changes that they've had, how bad they were last year. And again, you go out and handle your business, you're going to probably be up there playing for a Pac-12 championship. And the other preseason thing was the all Pac-12 teams, which USC tied for first with, 9 players for 10 spots, not including honorable mention. And Caleb Williams, first team, Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, this is all off the dome. Truly Tuipulotu, Andrew Voorhees, first team, Travis Dye, first team as a kick returner,
Yes.
all-purpose player. And then second team, you had Mekhi Blackman and
I think Travis Dye was also there.
Travis Dye, second team
Yeah.
running back offense. And I think that was all for
Brendan Rice
Brendan Rice was also
as a returner.
But I just want to say, I think it's laughable that Kalen Bullock
Yes.
did not even get an honorable mention. And to get an honorable mention, you just need at least 4 media votes. How did 4 people not vote for Kalen Bullock, who was a freshman, All-American last season, and a true freshman starter for this defense? And some of that Caleb Williams talked highly of in his podium, just to how that's a guy who's just really impressing him. I don't know. I have no words, and there's a conspiracy. Did Kalen Bullock slap every media person's mom? I don't understand why he did not
It might be my fault.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Take the floor.
Real quick. I hadn't been a voter for the last year or two for some reason. Like, I got off of their mailing list. Maybe because we were talking a little the Pac-12 podcast, maybe they.
Oh, okay.
But I was emailing with them. I got back on the list. But unfortunately, they sent you a thing to vote while I was in Catalina, with no service. And I ran, the deadline happened and I didn't get to vote. So maybe he got 3 votes and my vote would have put it over the top. Yeah. I would have had the poll. I would have had USC second, Utah first. So I would have maybe make that a little closer.
Well, who would you vote for on this first teams? Who would you put on there? Let's just do it right now. Share us what USC players.
I mean, Caleb Bullock would have been in there. He would have probably been a second teamer for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't but
So
he would have
let
been
me
involved.
answer why Kalen Bullock didn't get there. And listen to all the names that you listed. Outside of Andrew Voorhees, most of those names are transfers. Mm-hmm. Most of them, and when you transfer, then hey, people, get the news alert or see the tweet or whatever, and oh, Brendan Rice is transferring. Is he any good? Let me check out and see if he's any good. You're not looking to see the guys that are still there. And when your team is awful, like USC was last year, no one cares to watch and see what Kalen Bullock can do. And also the fact that Kalen Bullock played 3 different positions last year. He moved around a lot. So there were times where he struggled a little bit and had some freshman struggles. We, watching him every day, know what he is capable of, have seen the plays that he can make, have seen the teach tape type of moments that he had, like the Washington State interception, and know that he is, a kid that is going to be a gem for USC. And the fact that looking at some of the photos, looking at the videos that USC has produced, the weight is starting to come. He's still super, super thin, but he's not rail thin anymore. So we see, because we're paying attention to it a lot more. We've had to watch all those games, those terrible games last year. And for someone like me who watched it 6, 7, 8 times, doing film study and review and all that stuff. But if you're, a Utah, writer, are you watching that USC game? Maybe you watch the 60-minute version while you're having a cocktail or while you're doing your other work. You're not looking up at every single play and studying this guy. So that's why someone like Kalen Bullock, I think, gets overlooked. Whereas someone like Andrew Voorhees, you see the PFF, tweets and everything, because he's one of the top offensive linemen in the country as far as their grading for interior offensive linemen. So I think that's where he got pushed out there. I completely agree that he got shafted in that regard, but it's a preseason poll. No one thinks about the preseason poll. You don't put that on your resume later, like, hey, I was preseason. Hey, what'd you do what about after season? Were you first team then? Oh no, what had happened was, that's not what you put on there. So as long as he stays healthy, I think at the end of the season we're going to see Kalen Bullock probably first team, maybe second team. We'll see. Just off the top of my head, I don't know all the safeties, going through it in the Pac-12. I would have to do some research there. And maybe you have some media voters that are like Ryan, came back from a trip because of summer, and you go, oh, crap, I got to get this in real quick. And you just go off the top of the dome. You don't have that full research. So couple different ways that he got left off.
I know it's a preseason poll, but as a Kalen Bullock stan, I will not stand for the disrespect.
Wait, we get it, Chris.
I will not stand for the disrespect. And Shotgun, don't forget, you have to reveal who your guy is on this team, as someone requested for Tunnel Vision.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about this, but Kalen Bullock is actually up there. From his Pasadena Mirror days.
Step off, Shotgun.
Going to see a couple other guys on that team and just falling in love with his energy, just bouncing around on the sidelines, so much energy, and you see the playmaking ability as well. Whew, he's a fun kid to watch, and I love the huge smile that he has and how everyone gravitates towards him. He's one of those type players. So of the returners, Kalen Bullock is definitely up there.
Yeah. Real quick on the two guys, Caleb Williams and Shane Lee, were very impressive in the interviews that I heard. When we got to ask them some questions, but a couple of DMV guys talked about that. I asked them if they were friends with Jordan Addison, and and Caleb Williams was like not really. He said he wasn't really involved. He didn't really know him, prior to when they were in the DMV area. So that was something we thought about, but he was not shy about we were all texting him, making sure your players, if people are like, oh, there's a tampering, Caleb Williams was, hey, I want you to come here. I'm going to text you. There's no, you can't stop a player from texting another player. I don't think it didn't seem like it was in the direction of any coaches or anything like that. They're like, yeah, dude, I want to get the Kliffkov winner here and I want to throw balls to him. So I thought that was kind of funny. But a lot of DMV talk, Chris, with that little scrum. I thought you would have enjoyed it.
You're telling me a couple of DMV guys were impressive with the media?
Yeah, it's shocking. I know.
Tell me when something real.
Wait, Chris. What if you were being interviewed by the media? You think you would be impressive?
He also talked
I
about
dropped something.
Caleb Williams talked about they was asked by Ashley Adamson about his what he would do if he wasn't playing football. He talked about swimming, being a competitive swimmer. I was waiting for Chris Trevino coached him at swimming.
I was waiting for my photo to pop up on the Pac-12 Media Day,
yeah.
Chris, you got to have that conversation and remind him of that, because he may have forgotten, thought you're still in the DMV. Maybe you're covering Maryland, but now you got to have that conversation. I have reignite that passion.
I have the photo of us when he was a small little guppy, and me also as the coach. I have the photo. I have the team photo. I'm saving it though.
I was going to
say,
saving it. How has that not been tweeted out?
I'm saving it to drop it at a reasonable time. I'll do it after his Heisman win.
I think Keely brought it up to him at some point, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm frequently mentioned on the victory pod for whatever reason.
Well, yeah.
Nick Figueroa brought me up on there. I know people. I think Alex Stadhouse brought me up on the thing. I'm around. I'm like an unofficial co-host of the Victory Pod.
Nice.
Go check out the Victory Pod.
Very cool.
So to go back to the actual conversation about Caleb Williams talking about Jordan Addison, I think it shows you the intelligence, the leadership of Caleb Williams. He knows the transfer rules, having gone through it. He knows whether coaches are allowed to reach out, because we talk with players. And I've talked with different players, the different sports about, they're like, oh, wait, can I reach out to someone now? Or is that allowed? Or is that might be tampering. And you have to explain to them, you're a player. You can basically do whatever you want. You talk to whoever you want. Whereas Caleb Williams knows exactly what is going on. And it's a continuation of what we've seen with all the NIL stuff that he's done, with all the stuff when he's been on campus, how he's handled himself in the live broadcast of the spring game, doing interviews in between drives. He gets it. Everyone gravitates towards this type of player, and he knows how good Jordan Addison is. He said, yeah, I knew he was a DMV guy. I didn't know of him. I didn't know him, but I knew of him. Obviously, you're going to keep up with the guys that are doing really well from the DMV area or the area you're from. And so when he hit the transfer portal, or maybe even before, because players are allowed to text whoever they want, he said, man, I would love to have this guy. Let's add him to this receiving core. If I want to throw to somebody, maybe the best wide receiver in the country last year, at least the best stats, the best season, because Drake London was the best player. We know that. He just didn't get to finish off the season because of the injury. He would have won the Kliffkov if not. And he's shown that with a couple of the clips he's already had with the Falcons, that I was able to tweet out. And apologies to the person whose video that I hijacked. I didn't realize that I was not tagging that person. Want to give some props as well there. But we've seen Drake London producing already as a first-round pick, and he would have probably won the Kliffkov. But Jordan Addison wins it, and Caleb Williams goes, that's the best guy that's returning to college. Let me go see if I can talk him into coming to USC.
Shotgun, how dare you? You hate people stealing other people's content. How
hate
dare
people,
you?
so,
You become the villain.
My apology on a live broadcast here.
Appreciate that. Okay, I think that's probably about all from Pac-12 Media Day. We do have fall camp coming up.
Friday.
Friday, USC fall camp starts. They're actually going to have a media day August 4th on Thursday. So all afternoon, we'll be at the USC campus getting interviews with, it'll be like a couple dozen players and coaches. Looks like there's going to be some opportunities for one-on-ones with people, just sort of like a big group setting where you can kind of bop around and talk to different people. So we'll be out there in full force. Lots of content coming into, asking questions heading into fall camp. There will be open practices or semi-open practices, like basically what we had in the spring. We can watch the first 20, 30 minutes, depending, the individual drills, stretching, things like that. But we can shoot footage so you can kind of see, the DBs going through different footwork drills, things like that. They're kind of fun. See the quarterbacks throw, receivers catching, things like that. Usually the linemen are a little bit tougher. They're kind of further away, but we'll see what we're able to shoot if they move some guys around. And we'll get some photos and stuff from practice too, so you can kind of see what guys look like, how their bodies have changed and all of that. And of course, we'll have interviews afterwards. Sometimes it's just Lincoln Riley available. Sometimes it's the defensive players and coaches. Sometimes it's offensive players and coaches. But there should be, at least a couple times a week, we'll be able to go to practice, get interviews, get content, and provide stuff for you. So we'll be able to give you a lot more insight on what's going on with the team. So that's, it's encouraging. There's going to be morning practices too. So if Chip Kelly's been an advocate of morning practices over at UCLA. He's done it at Oregon. He's done that for a long time. He actually talked about that during Pac-12 Media Day, where he's like, I don't mind the early kickoff times because we practice in the morning, and that's where the body clocks are. So that's kind of a shift. We see some morning practices and stuff. There's a few practices over in the Coliseum. But good news for us, and good news for the fans that listen to us, watch us. We will be able to watch some practices. We'll be able to talk to a lot of people, kind of figure out what's going on. So I'm excited about that, guys.
And I know someone is going to ask it, but no, they are not open to the public.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, they're not open to
I'm just jumping on that now.
Oh, and one quick thing on the Pac-12 Media I forgot. I talked to Luke Musgrave, the great Oregon State tight end, because I asked him, hey, what do you think Beaver Stadium is going to be like? What's Corvallis going to be like when USC goes up there? Was it week 3 or 4? Checking out, and is it going to be crazy, knowing that USC's like leaving and stuff? And he's very politically correct answer. He wasn't like, oh yeah, they're going to be fired up. He's just like, we always love to have the fans there, blah, blah, blah. It just was kind of like a boring, but I want to try to get a cool soundbite from him. Like, oh yeah, they're going to like.
He didn't take the bait, Ryan.
He didn't take the bait, but that's going to be one to watch. I know Kliavkoff was saying that they want everyone to be treated fairly, but when you go to, that's going to be a crazy environment. Anyway, when you go to USC, goes to Corvallis.
And don't forget, Reser Stadium is being renovated, so you have less people going to be there. So I think it's going to be a little bit more even intense. The people that are there are going to want to be, super, super fired up about it. So I think that's the first one. I think Stanford is Stanford. And
right.
There's a little bit of rowdiness there because there's a little bit of a rivalry. And Stanford people will tell you that USC is one of their rivals. USC people won't tell you the same thing about Stanford. And you'll see that if they do not end up in the same conference in 2 years. Whereas Stanford, David Shaw, talked about, hey, we'd love to still play USC and UCLA. And USC will be like, that'd be cool if we could make that happen, but we're not going to force the issue on that. We have 2 rivals, and it's UCLA and it's Notre Dame, and we'll focus on them. And, hey, Stanford, yeah, they're a tough opponent, and they're one of the teams we played a bunch. So I don't think Stanford will have that rowdiness, but I think Oregon State, you are going to have it. And then the next road trip, I believe, is the Utah road trip, and that one should be dramatic, should be fun. The muss is always crazy. I got to buy my plane ticket now to make sure that I'm going, just because I haven't ever been to Salt Lake City for a Utah home game, so I'm really looking forward to that one.
Really?
But I've never been.
Wow.
I've been to Salt Lake City. I've been to cover Utah baseball, but they don't play on campus. So this will be my first time on campus at Utah. Technically, that's the last campus I haven't been to in Pac-12.
Yeah, I should have asked. I talked to Cam Rising briefly at lunch, just said hello. If you guys remember when he beat USC, he was FaceTiming with his mom on the field by himself after the game, and I had tweeted out a picture of it, and it kind of went a little viral. I was like, yeah, I was the guy that took the picture. He's like, oh, thanks, or whatever. And but I should have asked him about what do you think, what's the muss going to be like when USC gets there? So that would have been a good one. But
And I talked to Mr. Pick Six, Clark Phillips the third.
Yeah,
The third
I think it's
for
the third.
Shotgun's guy.
That is one of my guys. Clark Phillips is a guy that USC definitely should have recruited harder, and they did not. And you see with the talent that he has, was committed to Ohio State at one point before flipping to Utah late. But great kid from La Habra, just super down to earth, super respectful young man. And I've been watching his career and watching him develop, and to see him at Pac-12 Media Day that was one of the little bit disappointing not to be there. One of those guys that you see grow up as a Southern California kid, and to not be able to kind of chat with him. We have chatted with him in the last couple of years when USC has played Utah, or at least last year. 2020 didn't get a chance to because of all the restrictions. But it's fun to see those kids grow up and continue to get better and better. And Clark Phillips is one of those guys. And from La Habra, from his he is Clark Phillips III. And I can remember that because the first game I remember of him was 3 pick sixes, I believe it was. So 3 pick sixes. That's a ridiculous game, even in a high school game. So, Ryan, what do you got there?
Oh, hit that like button, people. That's Jamie put that up there. So I was like, all right, Jamie, thanks.
Hit it 3 times.
Yeah.
For Mr. Pick Six.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, thanks, Jamie, for that. Yeah, if you haven't subscribed on our YouTube channel or follow any of us on Twitter, I'll put up our Twitter handles again. You can follow us there. You can watch the videos live. You can go to our Facebook page too, uscfootball.com over there. But at Inside Troy on YouTube, subscribe there. That's kind of the main place where we get the most viewers on YouTube. And if you can subscribe to the page, that's great. Hit the like for this video and any of the other videos, and for the page, we love that too.
Also,
it definitely helps.
Follow us on TikTok if you are on TikTok at the Peristyle.
Yeah,
please.
I got to start doing some more TikTok stuff, but which I don't do that much of.
We'll get you on some dances.
Yeah, I love it.
Practice your touchdown dances, because we would think that USC will be in the end zone a lot this year. So we could mimic what we would think that each individual wide receiver or running back or quarterback would do in an end zone dance.
Hopefully in the third quarter.
Nice. Real quick before I get to questions, there is a bless you, sir.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
Woo!
We got to see more of the fresh haircut there. Pool party was this weekend, so a bunch of recruits and stuff were on campus. We won't get into too much detail, but any thoughts, guys, on USC doing the pool party thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of marks the end of the recruiting for the summer, because now kids are going to start focusing. Their summer camps start for their high school, so this is kind of the last thing they do before they buckle down and focus on their respective seasons, whether that be senior, junior, or maybe a breakout sophomore season. So this was just an opportunity for USC to kind of get one more final push of recruiting in. Had a couple of big guys on campus. DeAndre Carter, Brandon Baker, the 2 big modern-day offensive linemen. Baker being number 2 offensive tackle in the country in our 24/7 Sports rankings. Aaron Butler, the USC commit, was on campus. They had some guys from Texas come up. Jordan Addison, wide receiver. They had some Sarah guys. Jason Mitchell, Dakota Fields. So there's a Bosco contingent there. So they had some top guys from across Southern California. So pretty good turnout. And now, these guys are going to focus on their senior years, their high school seasons, what have you, moving forward. And hopefully, that sticks in their mind, this pool party when they come back to USC in the fall. when they come to Coliseum to watch USC, the new USC under Lincoln Riley. So it's just a little end point, exclamation point on the summer recruiting that USC has had this offseason.
I think the most notable thing from this, along with the two modern-day offensive linemen, because obviously offensive line has been such an issue for USC in the past, is that there are a number of local kids that might have gone elsewhere, that probably would have gone to some event, some unofficial visit, especially the younger kids. Let me go check somewhere else out. And there's players like DeAndre Carter and Brandon Baker who've been to USC multiple times since Lincoln Riley was hired, but decided to come back to USC for another event rather than go check out somewhere new, go somewhere else. They said, let's just go down the road. Let's go, to USC, stay in Southern California and, hang out with the coaches there, get to know them even more. I think that is a big step forward for USC and will more than likely materialize in the 2023 class a little bit, but more even the 24, 25 classes going forward, is that if you can keep those kids at home from Southern California, rather than them going elsewhere and checking out other places, those extra trips that they make away that come to you versus going somewhere else means that much more of an opportunity to keep them home. Those are the players that you really want.
All right. Should we jump into some questions?
These just
We're
general.
gonna go rapid fire, right?
I think
We're rapid?
We could probably rapid fire. I'll try to pull. Do you have any that you want to do? I can look through. I'll look through the comments
the doc
here.
has them all in there, as well as the bolded ones that are probably the better questions. So.
Oh.
Nice. Well, here, I'm going to grab some from.
So these are rapid fire, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. There's one from John. I'm going to pull up here on the screen. Is Coach Lincoln Riley going to make any surprise additions via the transfer portal? And is SC recruiting Aiden Breland, the defensive lineman from Modern Day?
I get the Aiden Breland question a lot. To my knowledge, he wasn't at the pool party over the weekend. He's a big boy. He's like 6'5", 270 or something. I don't know why there doesn't seem to be any sort of real kind of traction between those two. But also, it's like he's a 2024. I know you do want to try to get in the door early, but there's still a lot of time, for USC to kind of pick that recruitment up. It seems like the two offensive linemen are their main priorities, Baker and DeAndre Carter. I would not be shocked if down the line they start recruiting him a little more. And remember, T.A. Cunningham from Los Alamitos, the big 5-star defensive tackle, #1 defensive lineman in the country, just came to Los Al, transferred over from Georgia. So I think he's going to be obviously the #1 guy probably on that board and for that defensive line haul they're trying to get in 2024. So a couple of other guys on the list above him, I would say, but I could definitely see them getting involved with Breland. And then with Lincoln Riley, actually, I'm going to let Shotgun take it because I've talked too much for a rapid.
For the Breland question, let's just say that, remember when Nate Burrell had a huge sophomore season for St. John Bosco, and everyone was like, why is USC not recruiting him harder? And he got to a stage, and he's a Pac-12 recruit, but not the guy that USC was looking for. So let it play out. You want to see how those guys develop when they still have some time to go along. And sometimes you put an iron in the fire and you keep it a little bit warm, but you're not really stoking the fire and trying to make it a huge bonfire to begin with. So maybe that's a wait and see recruit for USC. Obviously, they're going to be at Modern Day to see their practices, to see their games. So if he shows out then it may come on as it progresses.
All right. We got another one. This one's from Tony. Were our guys intentionally upstaging all in slick tailored suits, or did we just not get the memo on the mandatory, quote, yard work casual attire plan for the other 11 schools?
Look,
I didn't read that full question initially that it said yard work in there. Yard work casual. That's pretty good. You want to be casual. A lot of players, a lot of teams travel casual, and some teams travel where you got to wear a suit and tie. And USC and Caleb Williams is a guy that loves his fashion, and I was not a big fan of his fit at this particular event.
Well, how dare
I'm not
you.
a big fan of the checkered suits, not a big fan there. But they said, we're going to ball out and we're going to show them what LA and Hollywood is about. And, they looked much better than the rest of the group. And hey, you want to be casual when you're traveling? And maybe because a lot of the other teams were traveling, they decided, let's just go casual with it, where USC is like, we're going to be on TV, even if it's the Pac-12 network. We're going to look good.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out Jed Fish, who also wore a suit, but
Yes.
no tie, kind of open. The suit was whatever, but he had the fresh pair of Nikes on with the blue and a white, so pretty clean for the Arizona head coach. I just want to say a top 5 fit for me.
He was very good. He's, you always have those coaches that are fun to listen to, like when Mike Leach was around or whatever. I mean, Rolovich was pretty fun even before he went like kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But I would say Jed Fish was really good. He kind of took a shot at USC about recruiting, where they were like, yeah, if you want to stay home and you want to be able to you're going to fly 4 hours to go to New Jersey or something to watch a game, or you can jump in your car and just 5.5 hours you'll be in Arizona. And Chris Cartman was next to me and he tweeted something like, yeah, you're going to probably get a lot of speeding tickets if you're getting to Arizona in 5.5 hours. But
Shotgun could do it.
Yeah.
And also, let's just fly rather than drive that.
Yeah, it's a quick
If
fly.
it's going to be the same amount of time, let's at least go across the country and check out some different climates.
Yeah. All right, we're not doing very good rapid fire thing. Bobby,
I'm trying.
what are your thoughts on the Carol Folt report about shutting down expansion last year? Is she playing chess there? Everyone else playing checkers?
Right?
Playing chess?
Backgammon or what?
Yeah.
She's playing mahjong. I think it's we mentioned it earlier in the show, but I think it's super intriguing. Was USC doing this on purpose to set up what was going forward, or was it just how things kind of played out, and that wasn't something that USC was looking forward to at the time?
Yeah. Here's a question from Aaron. Did other teams seem scared as well as salty towards USC? Based on the coverage, other teams seemed apprehensive, which I love.
I didn't feel salt or
scared.
Scared. I didn't feel any of that.
And we're hearing from coaches who we're not even hearing from the athletic directors. I think Rob Mullins was there. He spoke to reporters. The Oregon athletic director. I think you get a better feel from ADs, but Jen Cohen wasn't there. The Washington athletic director, like I said, USC and UCLA's athletic directors weren't there. The head coaches, this is all above their pay grade. They're just like, how does this affect me now? So I don't think there was a lot of salt or anything. There was a few veiled shots from Kliavkoff, and then you're trying to pump up your own program. I think Kyle Whittingham was pretty
chill.
He was really chill about this stuff. He's like, yeah, college football's changing. You got to change. And if you don't, you get left behind. And David Shaw is much more of a traditionalist, and he thinks that geography is going to work its way back. It's going to work out that you're going to still get back to your geographical area at some point. So
the only one who seemed salty was Justin Wilcox, but I just think that's Justin Wilcox normally.
Yeah.
That was just a normal day.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me find it.
Cheese wanted to know, is Max Gibbs leaving the team? And we touched on this earlier, but yes, Max Gibbs is no longer on the roster for USC.
Yeah. Here's this one from Andrew. Hold on. It's a little kind of how the sausage is made. You broadcast live shows all the time. How hard is it? It can't be that hard if we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
No, there's you don't see a lot of people doing it. We're seeing more people doing this kind of stuff. It's popular, and I think, but you do need, there's a bunch of equipment you need, a lot of infrastructure. But this is where my engineering background comes in handy. I've always been able to figure all this kind of stuff out, where I'm more worried about how do I make sure the broadcast is going right? How do I get your question up on the screen and things like that, versus what am I going to say? I just go off the cuff of what I'm going to say. I'm usually worried about the broadcast more than anything. But
if you ever see the screen go just to shotgun, just know that Ryan and I are putting out some sort of fire on the back end, so you can't see us. There's just a lot of hand waving. There's me texting "What are you doing?" There's a lot of chaos in the background.
Yeah. No. When we do put another, so just having all these different camera angles, this is just part of what we're trying to bring some level of production value for all you guys, so it's more entertaining. So like, if hey, we're talking about George Kliavkoff, like, oh, there's a picture of him up on the screen, or hey, we're talking about Lincoln Riley, and there's a picture up on the screen. It's a little harder now because when Keely was here, she was hosting and then also producing. So I'm producing as I'm hosting. Not the easiest thing to do. We would love to get like a regular just producer in here that can kind of control all that stuff, so you don't see me kind of looking for the next question and all that kind of stuff. They can do it. But it would be better if like the three of us were just talking and then we have a producer doing it. So hopefully we'll be able to get that.
Send us your resume
this year. Yeah, send us your resume if you're interested in doing that. So it's not that easy. But I love doing these, and I think we're getting good numbers as far as viewers and stuff go. We get good feedback on all of it. And you get to kind of see what's going on here. And if it was just three of us on the screen just talking like in a Zoom call with three boxes and that's all you saw, you might as well just listen to the podcast. We want to try to give you some sort of visual, adding to the experience through the visual medium, not just what we're saying. But we put them up as podcasts too. You might be listening to this as a podcast later.
And live questions and everything else, we try to take all that as well. Live calls. Hopefully we'll have that during the season as well. Get back to that. But also make sure you hit the like. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below, so that you are, getting up to date on all these, so you can keep growing those numbers, and we'll keep growing this and be able to, invest a little bit more into it. Yeah. Ryan, have you got another question, or do you need to go to me?
I got Dave. Why didn't a reporter ask the Stanford AD when he was on stage with Kliavkoff, would Stanford join the Big Ten if given the opportunity? That's good. He was asked about if you had contact with the Big Ten, and he said no. I think when you're talking about Stanford, and I talked to a lot of people about Stanford, because essentially everyone's waiting on Notre Dame. A likely pairing that's been brought up for Notre Dame would be Stanford. There's a lot of as far as academics go and all that, but Stanford's in a really interesting case because they have 30-something teams. Like, that's a lot of travel for all those teams. I think they're really focused on the student athlete experience. They kind of want to do things their own way. They don't do a lot of transfers. It's hard to get into graduate school. You graduate in Stanford in 4 years and you want to play a fifth year. They don't let you can't get into the grad school. You have to go somewhere else. There's some weird stuff going on with Stanford, and would they want to play that game? The NIL stuff, like, oh, really? It's going to get to the point where players become employees and all that, and you just get the feeling that Stanford doesn't want to play that game. So I think he would have said, probably could have said no and not been lying, but there might be some significant interest there if the Big Ten comes calling. But Stanford's not. They got a $30-something billion endowment. Like, they got plenty of money, So I don't know if it's not like UCLA where your athletic department was like $100 million in the red. This is I think it's a different story. I don't know if Stanford would say yes. Where I think Oregon, Washington definitely would. You guys have any thoughts? Or
didn't he say formal? Didn't he say formal talks?
I think he said formal. I think the question was formal talks, maybe. Or if he didn't say, yeah, they might have talked back channels and stuff. It's hard to say.
I thought it was interesting, both David Shaw and Bernard Mira, their comments during Pac-12 Media Day didn't sound like they were in any rush to go anywhere else. And everyone has kind of mentioned that, hey, if Notre Dame comes in, well, Stanford would be a good partner for them because you don't want to add an uneven number to a conference. So, but would Stanford even go? That after those comments, you think, yeah, that would make sense. All the extra money, everything else. Hey, the Big Ten's going to want to add some West Coast teams to mitigate some of the travel. There's going to be an issue for USC and UCLA going forward. But when you listen to those comments, you go, maybe Stanford has no interest in even going to the Big Ten. And like Ryan said, there are a lot of things that are mitigating factors that aren't working in Stanford's advantage. And maybe that's why you've seen the football team not be as good the recent years. I don't think it's just that. I think there's been some issues in that program. But their only program that is on a national level outside of the water polos and the other, that are regional sports is baseball that has really been producing. And baseball has its own challenges with the transfer portal and everything else. Because like Ryan said, you're not getting grad transfers. You are losing grad transfers where other people are getting 6-year seniors that are 24, 25. Tyrone Tellini is 26 years old, guys. 26 years old for USC. That guy, and part of it is because of his background and not starting school at the same time. But you're not getting 26-year-olds at Stanford because of they have very strict standards for their grad programs. The baseball team, because I know that one best, has had one grad transfer. One. So, and all these transfer portal and how that has become, much more of a viable option even before the NCAA actually created the transfer portal 2 years ago. The last 6-8 years, it's become much more of a bigger thing, in basketball as well as baseball and some other sports. They've had one in the baseball program. So, they have some challenges there. And a lot of people, can relate it to USC's baseball challenges. And we had a baseball question. I have to bring it up. Roger Dodger said, shotgun, if USC baseball disappoints again this year, should they convert the baseball field to a softball field and guarantee winning natties? And I'm so tired of this question on the message boards that I just delete these oftentimes. If you're one of the people that puts USC should just get a softball team and get rid of baseball, I just delete some of your messages in case you're wondering where those have gone.
Damn.
Because I'm just tired of listening to it, tired of having that discussion. They're not going to do that. They may add softball. They're not going to get rid of baseball and get softball. They're going to get rid of the baseball field and put a big pool there for the Olympics, but they're going to then bring back baseball. USC getting rid of their baseball team would be like Alabama during the Dennis Franchione or whatever, the Shula days where they really sucked, saying, you know what, we're just going to get rid of football. We're going to get a lacrosse team. We could be really good at lacrosse. I know we've won a bunch of championships. We have the most in the nation, but we're going to go for lacrosse. That would be the equivalent of USC baseball, who has 12 national championships, with the next closest school having half of that, having 6. So, yeah, no, USC is not getting rid of baseball.
All right.
Thank you so much for that rapid fire answer.
Very good.
I answered multiple questions, Chris.
Bobby, can Big 12 start marketing USC and UCLA openly in the LA area? Will USC start to promote the Big 10 in or around the stadium?
It's probably about a year away from that.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, they don't know. They haven't figured out the scheduling stuff yet. I don't think there's nothing they can't, market. Like they could put like commercials coming soon, USC and UCLA, like to the Big Ten. I'm sure that'll happen, but probably not like right now. Like they're going to talk about the current season and stuff, but I don't think there's any rule that would prohibit them from mentioning. It's not like coaches can't talk about a prospect that's committed but not signed. Like I don't think that's the case for something like this.
Yeah, wait for the season.
What they should do is do like the commercial should be like a movie trailer, and the big reveal is at the end, and it's USC and UCLA.
Yeah.
But if they're marketing USC and UCLA with billboards or commercials or anything else right now, it basically it's just them being dicks about it.
Yeah, it would be. You could have like Tommy Trojan
this year.
Next
year, yeah, it makes sense.
Tommy Trojan sitting at a desk and he's got like 3 hats in front of him. There's the Big Ten hat. There's the Pac-12 hat. And he's like, he grabs the Pac-12 hat and he's like, throws it away. And there's the Big Ten hat. It does, that would be just kind of a dick move. So probably don't do that. Chris,
that should be a next TikTok video for us.
Question: thoughts on Malachi Nelson visiting Texas A&M from SC Neal? He was there this past weekend.
We've had a couple of these, and people are freaking out on our message boards about this. Our War Room thread was basically all Malachi Nelson to Texas A&M, but let's just roll with it, guys. It's NIL, it's recruiting. People are going to take visits. Yeah, should you be worried? Sure, but are you going to be able to change anything? USC doesn't have collectives unless you're spending a bunch of money. You're giving a bunch of money to Boulevard. I don't think you really have an opportunity to make any actual adjustments.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you got there, Shotgun? I'll look for another one. I think I got. Here's one more from Mike. I'll put this one up, and then we'll get to some more rapid fire. Lincoln Riley was asked at Media Day what the expectations are for the season. His response was a national championship. What are your thoughts on the feasibility of that goal? And real quick, Caleb Williams was asked from Bill Plaschke about expectations, and he was like, expectations are basically, he's like, we're not looking at like the big picture like that. We're just trying to get better every day. It's more of an incremental thing. He wasn't going to say we need 9 wins or win the division or whatever. No divisions anymore, but win the conference. It just wasn't from what he was saying. That's not what the focus was. But I don't know. What did you guys think about what Lincoln Riley said about that?
I think there is a real world possibility that USC could compete for a college football playoff spot this year. A lot of things need to go right. You got to get obviously the defense needs to take a big step forward in year one for Alex Grinch. You need some production at some spots that have question marks. You need the offensive line to be healthy. And obviously you need the schedule sets up for it, but you got to get through Utah. You got to get through Notre Dame. You got to get through a tricky Oregon State road game. Like if they beat Utah, like that, if they're going there 6-0, Utah 6-0, they beat Florida week 1. You know, that's a college game day, and they beat that. Well, then it's off to the races with the preseason, with all that national media hype, and they're going to be talked up, and they're going to have a really good spot in that opening college football playoff ranking come whatever week that happens. And if they stay the course, they're going to be in that discussion. Now, do I think they can play for a national championship? No, because there are still so many deficiencies on this team that I just don't think they'd be ready to face, you know, an Ohio State team or an Alabama team in that first round, or whoever, or Georgia, or whoever's also in that bracket. You know, I don't think the team is built for that. I think they're built to compete for a championship, a Pac-12 championship. They definitely could get there. They could definitely win that. And if things go right, you know, they're going to get some momentum. They're going to get some hype around the college football playoff, whatever happens, you know, after that Utah game, how they look going to that Utah game. But I don't think there's a real world possibility they're playing for a national championship. I think there's a real world possibility that they're in that hunt seriously for a college football playoff berth.
All right, that's all the questions I have from the chat. Any other ones you brought up, Chuck?
I want to answer that one real quick.
I
don't think
not real
national,
quick. Not real quick.
I don't think they're a national championship contender, but they could get into the Pac-12 championship. And you know, if Clay Helton was the coach, he would have said, "We're in this to win championships," and then he would have been happy that they got a Pac-12 championship. But he would not have used those same words. So I think that just tells you the difference in mindset of the coaches there.
Yeah,
Hey, Pac-12 South championship.
right. That's
shirt,
exactly what
put
a lot
on
of
a
people
hat.
thought. Yeah, it was like this generic championships or what we. It was just like, yeah, what does that really mean?
It's a championship.
I know. I mean, there's an outside chance that I think USC could make the playoff because the competition in their conference isn't going to be as good. If they can get over Utah, they have a chance of doing that. I don't think they have a chance of competing if they made it to the playoffs. So there's not going to, the way they're built right now, like I think they're built that they could potentially win the Pac-12, but I don't think much more than that.
I agree with that, and again, that goes back to the trenches and you know the conversation we had earlier about offensive linemen. You know, there's going to be one nicked up. Can USC sustain 1 or 2 or 3 offensive lineman injuries? If you remember back the year that the USC lost at Washington State, Vianney Talamavayo goes down with a season-ending injury. They lost 3 offensive linemen that game. How do you react when something like that happens? USC does not have the depth to contend with something like that this year. And maybe they get lucky and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you do get lucky and you only have one guy go down. But if you get into a situation like that, suddenly you lose a game you thought you were going to win, and then you're behind the sticks basically trying to make up ground in a college football playoff ranking system type of thing. So a couple of rapid fire questions I had. Andrew had a great question early in the chat. Who will have a bigger impact this season, Damani Jackson or Raleek Brown? I thought that was really interesting. The 2 modern day teammates that were both freshmen this year.
I would say Raleek, just because I think it's easier to quantify his impact with yards and catches and stuff like that. And he's a dynamic weapon for that offense, which has weapons, but you know, Lincoln's going to find a way to use every little skill player that he has. So I would say Raleek.
Yeah, I think I would go Raleek also. There's not a lot of depth at the running back spot, but I could see Jackson coming in, helping out on special teams, punt return for a touchdown or something, pick 6, things like that. Then if that's the case, yeah.
He's just a little rusty.
Yeah.
Hasn't played football in a minute just because of the injury and such. So he's still trying to get back into it.
Valid point. The counterpoint to that would be Raleek Brown has a lot more competition for reps, whereas cornerback is super thin for USC. So can Damani Jackson take over one of those? from the videos and stuff we've seen, from what I've heard, Damani Jackson's fully healthy, should be ready to go for fall camp with no restrictions. So if that is truly the case, I think that bodes well for USC's cornerback class. Especially with the injury to Zion Branch, making it a little bit thinner. Maybe they move somebody over that safety spot. Who knows? As far as what he may be able to jump in there. Andrew also had the question: is Stanford a threat week 2?
I mean, they beat USC last year, but I would say no. I don't think Stanford's going to be very good. They won 3 games last year, even though 2 of them were USC and Oregon.
It would need to be a shootout.
I think they're going to be not so good.
And Tanner McKee, who is a legit NFL guy, would have to ball out. But I think USC will have more than enough offense and just enough defense to pull it out.
Yeah, Stanford will have better weapons this year, I think, but they lost their running backs. I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be very good.
The big question is, does their offensive line play any better? That's been the big issue for them. They haven't been ball style where they can just pound you over and over and over with the running game, and then now you have to bring 8 in the box and you throw one-on-ones to the big J.J. Arcega-Whiteside or whoever may be on the outside. They don't have that anymore because their offensive line haven't been able to do that or protect the quarterback. That's the big question. Can their offensive line get back on track? I don't think it will by week 2, so I think it's not a huge threat, but every team is a threat to USC because of how bad they were last year. Other than the Pac-12 network, Ron from LA, meaning Lower Alabama, asks, how else can someone watch the USC versus Rice game? From Lower Alabama, I'm going to guess the drive is about 28 hours. So, Ron, just make sure you're leaving on a Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, I'm sure there's bootleg links all over the place.
Yeah, just go on the Peristyle. There'll be a bootleg link in our game thread.
It's Pac-12 Network. I want to address
if there's a bootleg thread, make sure you're watching from an internet cafe if they have any of those in Lower Alabama.
Yeah. Bless them breaks. There's some arguing going on in the chat because there's always arguing going on in the chat. But there I guess, some debate about. So Bless them breaks was talking about a recruiting expert that we used to bring in years ago. Yes, it wasn't Lonnie. His name was Lanny Julius, and met him through former member of the USC Sports Information staff. We would go to lunch every once in a while. He was, worked at different colleges, talked a lot about recruiting. I believe he has unfortunately passed away, but we used to have him on right after signing day, on the podcast and stuff. And he would say a lot and always had some stories of who he recruited back in the day and he had a lot of information and a lot of opinions on the current commits and stuff like that. Sometimes he's not one of those guys that would say, I don't know. He would just talk and maybe that was true, maybe that was not a lot of stuff, but he had so many interesting insights to say. So I just want to let the people, and they were arguing about that. Yeah, his name was Lanny Julius. We used to have him on, once a year. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 times total. But we used to have him on, kind of talking about recruiting. So there was an argument.
The recruiting guys being able to talk for so much.
It's in their blood.
Yeah, there was a lot. It was a lot of talk. He was such a character. He would just tell you this. And then when I was working with Eric Dickerson, he would there was name dropping stuff, and he recruited this guy from high school, and I mean, it was crazy, the stories this guy would tell you, oh my God, this is insane. So
Hayden wanted to know, serious question, does USC and UCLA get to vote on who joins the Big Ten, if they were to add more teams in this round of realignment? Do they even care? We have heard the rumors about how USC may not want Washington or Oregon, may not want them in at this point. Does USC get a vote?
Yeah. We know that USC gets a full share. I think when they join in 2024, they'll be an equal member. So if there's any sort of vote, it wouldn't be it has to be unanimous, right? When you're bringing someone in. So if they brought someone in after they joined, they could, essentially veto, but you never vote unless you have all the, the votes that everyone's going to say yes. So, they would have, they're going to have an equal vote, but it wouldn't be until 2024.
The most notable thing I thought for USC from the Big Ten Media Day was the fact that USC is getting a full share immediately, because USC is obviously better than Maryland and Rutgers.
Oh,
what happened? What happened, Chris?
You did that You didn't need to go there. We talked about it on the podcast.
Frank from Virginia want to know an NIL question, and maybe we can answer this, maybe not. Can a commit that has agreed to an NIL have issues with the NIL if they decide to go to another school? Any legal issues? Any clarification is appreciated. Cedric Gibbons later asked, can you pocket the NIL money as a high school recruit from, say, Oregon and then flip to USC like Connerly is going to? Connerly's not going to do that. He's already at Oregon, doing summer classes and stuff. But there has been this discussion, and this is a topic that's kind of interesting and kind of unknown. And you wonder if this type of stuff does go on, is there eventually lawsuits that follow it?
Yeah, I think it depends on the contract. And if you look at different state laws, in California, you can take NIL money as a high school player. So that kind of comes into play. What can be written in the contract? I mean, legally, you're not supposed to make these inducements, but they are. They're basically, you're trying to get these, what Texas A&M was doing. Jimbo Fisher was talking about, the way they were structuring these deals. And it sounded like that's not the way it's supposed to be. Like, you're not supposed to legally be paying a kid so he can come to your school. So yeah, I think some of that stuff is they can't have in the contract, like you have to sign with the school because that's an obvious inducement. And
right.
If the NCAA ever decided to enforce that rule, which doesn't seem like they are, then you're like, it's in the contract that you're paying to come here. But you could say like, I mean, I'm sure there's creative things, and there's all these contracts would be different. I think some players are signing bad contracts, which we expected because people are just signing for whatever. But if you said, okay, so you want to, if the Josh Connerly example, he's already in school there, but you say that like, well, you have to do once a month, you have to do a autograph signing at this Eugene card shop or something. Well, if you were going to school in LA, it's going to be really hard for you to go up there and do a signing. So
just zoom in.
That would, but that would be a way to be like, basically, if you're not in this area, meaning you're not going to school here, you're not going to be able to fulfill your part of the contract and you wouldn't get paid. But if you switched, if someone gave you like a signing bonus or whatever, and you haven't signed yet, I don't know what you could, if they say, well, you keep this bonus, you have to do these events on, at this bookstore or whatever. So I think it would have to be some kind of language like that. But every contract is going to be different, so I think it would depend on the contract.
And the interesting thing is going to be who has better lawyers to draw up contracts. With some of these top-end recruits, and this has been something that's going on in baseball for many years because, hey, if you're a first-round pick, you're allowed to have an advisor, but you're not allowed to have an agent because to keep your NCAA eligibility prior to a couple of years ago. So Scott Boras may be negotiating for you as an advisor, but not actually your agent. Hey, Scott Boras is going to get you the right contract. But if you don't understand the rules, maybe you're from from outside of a city, you just don't have that network that really can direct you to someone like that. You're just you're taking someone from the middle of Mississippi and saying, hey, can you represent me? They don't know contract law the right way. They're just a lawyer that's a family friend or something, and somehow they get duped on the contract, and suddenly you're stuck in one of these type contracts. So that will all be involved in it, is who has the better lawyers at some point as well.
Yeah. Are we about done? Probably.
That's all the ones that I had.
All right. Well, we do appreciate everybody tuning in and watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also listening on the Peristyle podcast feed. Wherever you're listening or wherever you're watching, please like and subscribe. And if you are not a member of USCFootball.com, you're a VIP member, you can do it for $1. There's going to be a ton of content going up starting this week. Well, there's been a lot anyway, but fall camp content starting this week. So make sure you jump in there and get on that. We'll keep doing our shows. The schedule, the practice schedule is not, it's not daunting. It's not like we used to be able to go to campus every day. So we should be able to have some good shows, analysis, kind of breaking down what we saw out there at practice, what we heard from the players and coaches. So it should be a pretty good mix of us being able to check out the team and then coming to you on these various shows and kind of explaining what our thoughts are, what we think the team's going this season, looking at depth charts and all that kind of stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed all that. Any final thoughts, Chris or Shotgun?
No.
No, it's been an hour and a half.
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. I should be let's knock on wood here and hope that my flight goes as scheduled. If so, then I'll be there at Media Day to be able to meet some of the players a little bit more and get to know some of the newcomers. Looking forward to all that as USC gets into fall camp. It should be really fun. I mean, this is a team that's going to be completely, vastly, utterly different from last year's team with some familiar faces. It's almost like this team got bought by a company and it got to, part of expansion or something. There's some players you kind of remember, but a lot of new faces. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team kind of gels together and see how that camaraderie that Shane Lee and Caleb Williams talked about, the culture in the locker room, if that is true, or if it's something that's just a talking point like we hear every summer leading in. Oh, yeah, the culture is great. But I think some of the examples they gave lends me to believe them a little bit more than some of the things we've heard in the past. Last year, obviously, the culture was not great. The team was not great. The talent was not great. This year, we'll see if all three of those things are better or if it's just the talent has improved because of what they've been able to do in the transfer portal.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's going to wrap things up. Hope everyone out there enjoyed the show. We really appreciate your viewership and listenership, watching the show wherever you do it on the various platforms. Back this week, make sure you check out USCfootball.com. Tons of content, like I said, going up for USC Fall Camp. For Shotgun, Chris, I am Ryan. Thank you again, and we will talk to you next time.
Like, subscribe, follow.
Boom.